Hello, welcome back to another episode of Sploosh. So today I'm here with Daryl Lim and we're
Hello.
interviewing Yao Kai Chai.
Hello.
So for those of you who do not know him, he's a poet whose most recent work, One to the Dark Tower Comes, won the Singapore Literature Prize last year. He has had a long time in the media industry working as a journalist at the Straits Times, and he was also formerly the director of the Singapore Writers Festival. So I think to just warm us up, Kai Chai, what have you been reading, watching, or listening to recently?
Yeah, so the latest book I've gotten, well, it was a gift from Yong Shu Hung, a fellow poet who knows I like her writing. Yeah, so it's called A Film in Which I Play Everyone. The title itself is from a David Bowie interview where a journalist asked him, "What's your next project?" And then, I don't know whether it's in a facetious way, he said that, "I like to make a film in which I play everyone." So I thought it touches on all the things I like, like films and role playing and stuff. It sounds a bit weird for a 10 a.m. interview, but anyway. And Toby Martinez de la Rivas, I don't know that's how you pronounce his name, is a British poet whose third book is called Flood Meadows. It's a book about incantations, a kind of Ted Hughes pastoral, but a bit of interdisciplinary stuff. So again, one of those things that I like. So these two books are realistically the real books that I'm reading. There are a lot of other stuff that I'm reading for fun and for torture. Listening to music wise, the latest is the Sufjan Stevens album called Javelin, which is about, only after the fact that we know that it's about the death of his partner.
I thought it's useful to start off with some sense of biography. Maybe even before I talk about the first question, which is about when you wanted to start writing poetry. Maybe tell us a bit about your family background, how you grew up. Was there even a sense then that you would be an artist of some sort?
Well, I guess I am the only one in my family to go to the university, and I'm the youngest of four. So in that sense, I do feel kind of the idea of loneliness, the one that's odd one out and everything. But I also felt that I should live up to my parents' expectations. So they're not educated or anything, but they believe in education. So your answer your question is that, how do I? Yeah. So it's not a cultural milieu that you would expect, but I think they left it to me to discover things on my own, and I was discover television, discover films, music at a very young age, and I absorbed almost everything. So I'd never had the distinction of having to say that, I only listen to high art or like classical music, and then I can't listen to pop music. So I never had that prejudice for or against any particular genre of stuff. So only when I got into writing and creative writing, when I realized, okay, you're not supposed to write certain kinds of writing because they are not seen as true writing. Yeah, then that's where I realized there's a hierarchy of taste levels. Not that I'm exempt from, but I feel that if you start from that, you'll never write things which you're not necessarily good at, or know that you're not good at or good at. So if you have already set out limitations as to what you want to write, then you just self-fulfilling prophecy, right? You only write the things that you think you're good at, but actually you suck at it. Or you never had a chance to write things which you never know you're actually quite good at it, because you already felt that I want to be a certain kind of writer.
In terms of art forms, so actually what was the first art form that really attracted you? So I
See, the word art form is problematic, right?
could be
I
music,
guess
could be
media.
film.
Yeah, I guess media would be it. So television, films. I watched a lot of films growing up because my mom, I don't know whether, never mind, I throw her under the bus. Dragged me, or not dragged me, just carried me to watch like a horror movie. Like, I don't know whether y'all are very young. In the 1970s, like open air cinema, or like watch scary Asian horror film, 1970, like Snake Woman, what kind of thing, like. So these films are not really appropriate for anyone, infants or kids. But yeah, so I enjoyed it as kind of a communal activity, of a kind of space to get transported. The idea of transformation, the idea of, you don't have to be stuck in a particular world that you are birthed into. You can imagine different worlds. I guess that's probably the seed of why or how I write, I guess. Yeah.
And then how did that link in some way to, because film is film and music is music, but writing, of course, is a leap from that. So how did you start to then write from, although your first, in some ways, influences were film?
Yeah, the funny thing is that I did not grow up in an English-speaking family. So the real contact with the English language was when I was in primary school, kindergarten, I guess, yeah. But it wasn't something that was spoken at home. But so when I went into primary school or kindergarten, I realized that, there's some people who could speak English, and then I felt like, I couldn't, right? But I guess I was competitive. I always felt that just because you started first doesn't mean I couldn't catch up with you. So I guess I realized English was something which I could excel at, and probably the one that I find quite empowering, that you can go anywhere, right? I mean, it's kind of step to everything for a person who's born into, I wouldn't say I was middle class, obviously lower than middle class. So English language became a vessel, a channel to discovering so many different worlds, especially in Singapore in the 1970s, 80s, yeah.
Do you recall the first thing you tried to write? The first creative work that you tried to write?
Consciously, it would be in the 1960s, 70s, 80s. I think there was a school student magazine called Student World that was read by students of that time, and you could win like $10 first prize, second prize. So I participated, and I thought, I won. So I think I wrote silly limericks and things that rhyme as you would when you were starting out, like poetry has to rhyme. And I don't have the copy anymore. But I won. I mean, it's kind of national competition, right? Actually, I don't know about distribution, but it was distributed among schools, primary schools. In my mind, there were interesting poems, but perhaps they are not really that good. But that gave me some kind of confidence that maybe I should explore creative writing. But at that time, you don't want to go in. Maybe nobody wanted you to go into the arts, because poetry is a luxury. Yeah, we cannot afford. So really, honestly, art is something that you do as an aside, not something that you do as part of. Like, proudly say I'm a poet. It would be so embarrassing. I don't know whether you all remember the time when you would not say you're a poet.
Yeah, I think growing up, the possibility of a career in the arts was quite remote in the 90s. Yeah. Even then, I think after that, it really changed, like maybe in the last 15 or 10 years. Okay, one more question. Just do you recall the first book or literary work that really captured your imagination?
Capture my imagination, but it was so young, right? I mean, Annie Blyton, everybody would have read. So I Annie Blyton, the Famous Five, all those stuff. Yeah, so I guess my dad, again, he just bought me lots of books. I mean, he didn't read to me, but and therefore you just pick up, and I read them all the politically incorrect, like Gollywogs and stuff. Oops. Yeah. So basically, reading them, not just purely for the language, but just again the different type of worlds. That there's another world out there somewhere in this mythical land, right? I don't know, England or whatever. So so the language and the metaphors, I guess osmosis, you don't read, it's not studied or anything, it's just something that naturally you just, so I think all those I want to capture my imagination. But if you ask me about literary, like very consciously, that would be like secondary school, right? That would be, we'll come to that, right?
Okay, sure. Yeah, I like the idea of England as a fictional country, because in some ways it was like as remote as a mythological land. Yeah,
exactly. The weather is different. The people look different. I mean, they were. I don't know whether you all have seen the books. There were illustrations. They look.
I know the ones that you are talking about. Yeah.
I know your archivist. You collect sorts of.
Yes. Maybe we talk a little bit about film, since that has already dominated the discussion. And in some ways, I think film is very influential for you. So maybe just talk a little bit about how film, what impact it had on you. And I think we will come to that a bit more as we talk about the writing itself. But also how that influences your writing. And in some ways, the two for you are quite linked.
I think films have been and are still an escape for most Singaporeans, right? Okay, maybe when you were growing up, maybe not your time, sorry. In the 80s, going to the cinema was an adventure. Just going to the cinema itself. It's not like now it's so easy and you just choose cinemas very easy, or it's all streaming. So the idea of going to cinema was a kind of special occasion for my family. So for many Singaporeans, so the idea of watching it in a communal setting, as I mentioned, it was so special, and watching the audience as well was special. So in a way, cinema was the actualization of everything that I imagined I want to do in my writing, right? Because you have a 3D environment, you will see some kind of projection, you notice, you hear, okay, so it's sense around. So all the auditory, the tactile, the olfactory, all those senses are being invoked in a cinematic experience. So it's not just the movie, but the whole movie-going experience. So in that way, I sort of to link to my writing, I'm hoping to invoke all these sensory experiences rather than purely to absorb it on a textual level, on a word level. So it's meant to be hyper real, more like beyond words. And I think one of the questions which you sent to me earlier was to kind of catch me off guard, to say what I said many years ago to Desmond Con about that I don't understand everything. Essentially, it's like a cinematic experience, right? When you watch a movie, do you understand everything that you watch? Not on the first time that you watch, right? Perhaps you are too young, or maybe you didn't watch everything, you went toilet or whatever, or you were sleeping or whatever. So to understand, to fully feel a film, you have to immerse yourself over and over again. So I would like to think of my books as something which you don't necessarily understand. I hate the word understand. Actually, I want you to just immerse in it. Understanding is fraught and it can be judgmental. Yeah.
Yeah, in some ways, I guess the posture of understanding is maybe not the right approach to art, be it film or be it a poetry, right? You don't really want to intellectually understand works of art.
I think it's also because of the way we're taught in school about literature. Like, what is this poem about?
Correct.
Can you imagine that would be the first question, right? So, what's it about? Oh my god, that would be the encapsulation of what like you're circumscribed. What this poem about, and that is the model answer. But the truth is that maybe that's not what the poem is about.
That's right. I mean, just to add on to this, I think it'd be absurd to ask someone, what is this painting about? Or like
It would be, right?
Or how do you understand this painting?
Yeah, I also don't want the artist or the poet or anyone to explain his or her own poem, because I don't know, as a writer, you wouldn't want people to only interpret a poem the way you want it to be. In fact, I like misreadings, but again, you got to be careful what I said. You got to take my words with a pinch. I like misreadings because misreadings sometimes open up different conversations rather than say, "Oh, you're wrong. That's not what my poem is about." In fact, I think that once you write something, it's not for you to dictate how it should be read. I'm not saying that you can be like far off of it, but I like the idea of possibilities, and maybe perhaps it opens up other ways of looking at things, and then you could be wrong. None of us are 100% right all the time, and I like to learn from the readers actually. Yeah, I love to learn it from younger generations who are exposed to different things. If I were your age, what would I write? I guess that's what. Or if you were my age, would you write my stuff, or would you just write like a lot of my contemporaries? Oops, don't want to name names, right?
It's okay. We can go into that later. Since we're on writing, maybe we can jump a bit to the writing itself, because we have a few questions there. I'll let Hao Yang, who has done a lot of study and work for the questions, do his thing.
But yeah, I think for most readers, right, the general impression of your writing is that it's really hard to understand, right? The word again, understand, right? And especially so in later works, especially once The Dark Tower comes. So now I was reading the critical introduction on poetry.sg. So David Wong writes, the pursuit of the image drives memory and experience. These are classical things you look out for in poetry, right? so far from their point of origin that sentiment is abstracted out of existence. So I'll read a sample from the poem Once the Dark Tower Comes in Declaration. Ditch those breastplates, prop up the tailboard, and have some marshmallows. Then let's talk about why you are banging on the wrong one. Pizzicato strings seesaw for the answer dangling. So it's quite hard, I guess, for the average reader to, I guess, find feeling or meaning in these lines, right? And so it does not quite fit, really conventional understandings of poetry as, what Wordsworth says, the spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings, or as a means of, ordering human experience into something meaningful that you can convey to other people, right? So perhaps to begin with, I would like to just ask you, like, what do you see a poem as? And then what is a good poem to you?
I mean, I like all your references, and I would say it's fair to say that it's not easy to read my poetry and not feel frustrated. So I would not be delusional to think that what I write is understandable. But again, that's why I said that perhaps that's kind of foolhardy errand to start with that, because if you start with the idea of wanting to understand every single word, then you will get trapped into trying to solve mysteries, while my priority is not to lead you from point A to point B, but actually to let you loose in this universe of maybe red herrings and cul-de-sacs and stuff. And I don't like to explain. Yeah. So you ask me what is a poem, what is a good poem. I don't like to explain because I like the audience or the readers. I use the word audience partly because I like it to be something that the frustration is part of it. Yeah, kind of. I'm kind of a sadomasochist. I like the reader to feel like, oh my God, it's so horrible, or this. I've read NUS honors thesis. This is somebody who did a thesis on me and a few other writers, and I think she really hated my poetry. Yeah. No, it's okay to hate, but it's how you explain it, and I was like, okay, you obviously asked the wrong questions. So again, I because as a reviewer myself, as someone who does reviewing, did reviewing in my time in ST, it's fine. It's actually fair to also judge the reviewer. Just as the reviewer reviews stuff, you can also review the reviewer, right? So I think it's fair. So I just say that, you asked the wrong question, so I don't really take your words too seriously. Maybe, but part of the frustration is also exactly the glee that I also want, because that means that she's unable to experience the poetry. Like she would like to think that the other poetry she understood and she really loves them, and she's fine, nothing wrong with that. But because she chose my poetry, I mean, I didn't force her to choose, but she just didn't realize that actually it's so different, different armory of tools, and I guess she wasn't open to it or doesn't really know how to talk about it. Or maybe she has a deadline. Oops, she has a thesis deadline. And I think that's scarier. I would say that, I don't really want to define a poem or what a good poem is. I think you need to define a poem or even what a good poem is on your own terms. Like, I can tell you, this is a poem, but actually it's a prose passage, or this is actually an essay. But I think in this day and age, without me saying, I'm sure you have seen a lot of your contemporaries, a lot of them are writing stuff which normally would have been classified as an essay, but you call yourself a poem. Why? We haven't entered the grey area called prose poem, and something like what Sean Hood did, right? Would that qualify as poetry maybe 10 years ago? 10 years ago, maybe, yeah, it might be. But the truth is that a poem is a very porous entity that absorbs all the other genres, and it can call itself whatever. It's kind of a rebel, a kind of a shapeshifter. Unfortunately, that one doesn't apply. Doesn't apply too much to the rest of the genres like prose or maybe creative nonfiction. Yeah, but you think about it, poetry these days is almost scarier, right? For anyone who's like, "Oops, this is so different from what I studied in school 10 years ago." It's like, me, this is called poetry as well, and that's what I like. Yeah.
I thought maybe I just jump in here, and in some ways I see Kai Chai's his work as a series of innuendos, and of course innuendos means you either get it or it can mean many things to you, or it cannot. So that's one way of seeing it. The other way, which I just thought of, another metaphor that I thought of for your poems is, in some ways, an alien artifact. So you kind of stumble upon alien artifacts as you go about, and in some ways, you're trying to figure out what is the origin of this artifact. They come from outer space. Who made it? And so, in some ways, I think of these two ways of thinking about your poetry. Yeah.
No, I really like that image. For all the cinematic evocations that it does, and I really like it. Thank you very much. I will use it and attribute it to you.